I never believed in ghosts. At least, I never truly believed, until that Christmas Eve changed everything. The snow fell thick and heavy outside, blanketing my small town in white silence. I had chosen to spend the holiday alone, far from family, telling myself that solitude was peaceful, a way to recharge after months of endless work and the constant hum of human chatter. The streets were empty, save for the occasional car trudging through the snow. Even the festive decorations seemed muted under the dim glow of street lamps, their lights flickering like tired eyes. I had decorated my apartment modestly, a small tree in the corner, a string of lights around the window, a single candle flickering on the mantel. It was enough. At least I thought it was. Around 9 in the evening, I settled onto my couch with a cup of hot chocolate and a book of Christmas tales. The wind howled outside, rattling the window panes. I smiled to myself, imagining cozy scenes from the story. Carolers singing, children laughing, fireplaces crackling. But as I read, a sense of unease began creeping up my spine. Subtle at first, like the touch of a cold hand. Then I heard it. A soft knock. At first I thought it was the wind. But it came again. Deliberate. Patient. I set my book aside and approached the door. The hallway was dark, the only light from the tree casting long, distorted shadows along the walls. I hesitated. Who could be visiting at this hour? I opened the door. Nothing. Only the snow swirling in the dim light of the street lamp. I stepped out, peering into the empty corridor. The world was silent. I turned back, shaking my head at my own nerves. "It's just the wind," I whispered. Back inside, I noticed something strange. My tree lights were flickering, though I hadn't touched them. The ornaments swayed slightly, though the air was still. A chill ran down my spine. Then I heard it again. This time, a faint whisper, almost beneath the hum of the heating system. "Merry Christmas." I froze, my heart hammering. The voice was soft, childlike, yet something about it made my blood run cold. I scanned the room. No one. I laughed nervously. Maybe I was tired. Maybe it was just the wind playing tricks, or some leftover echo from the stories I'd been reading. But then the whisper came again, closer, unmistakable. "Merry Christmas." I turned sharply. Shadows danced across the walls, flickering with the lights. My candle sputtered. My eyes widened. There, in the reflection of the window, I saw a figure, a small, pale child with dark, hollow eyes, standing behind the couch. I screamed and spun around. Empty. The couch was empty. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I ran to the kitchen, grabbing a knife. "Who's there?" My voice shook. Only silence answered me, thick and suffocating. The wind picked up, rattling the windows violently. Then the lights went out. Complete darkness swallowed the room. I could hear footsteps. Soft, deliberate, circling me, though I couldn't see anything. A hand brushed my shoulder. I screamed, swinging the knife wildly. Nothing. My apartment was empty. But then I heard it, directly behind me. "You shouldn't be alone on Christmas." I bolted for the door. It wouldn't budge. I yanked at the handle, panic surging through me. I tried to call for help, but my phone was dead. No signal, no power. Just the whispering, circling, breathing shadows that seemed to move closer with every heartbeat. Then I noticed the tree. Its lights were back on, brighter than before, but the ornaments were different. Faces twisted, screaming faces stared at me from every branch. Mouths opened, whispering my name, calling me closer. I stumbled backward, tripping over the rug. The whisper grew louder, more insistent. A melody now, soft and sweet, a twisted Christmas carol. Come, join us. Forever. My vision blurred. I backed into a corner, pressing the knife to my chest. Shadows lengthened, swallowing the corners of the room. The air grew icy, frost creeping over the windows. And then I saw them figures emerging from the darkness. Children, pale and silent, their eyes hollow, their smiles wide and cruel. They didn't move like humans, more like the shadows themselves taking form. One of them, a little girl, stepped forward. She held out a hand. I shook, terrified, yet unable to look away. "It's Christmas," she whispered. "Time to play forever." I screamed again. The shadow surged, wrapping around me, cold as death, pulling me toward the tree. Its branches reached out like hands, twisting, grasping. The ornaments' faces twisted further, laughing. I fought, clawing at the air, at the walls, at anything to break free. And then, silence. When I woke, the snow had stopped. Morning light streamed weakly through the window. I was on the floor, the tree standing serenely in the corner, ornaments glittering cheerfully, just as I had set them. I touched my arm. No scratches, no bruises, just a lingering chill. I thought it had been a dream. I tried to tell myself it had been a nightmare, a trick of my lonely mind. But then I noticed the small handprints on the window, tiny, cold, pressed from the outside, and a whisper, soft and barely audible, as if carried on the wind. "See ya. Next Christmas." The morning light did nothing to soothe my nerves. I kept glancing at the tree, half expecting those faces to start moving again. They didn't. The ornaments hung serenely, glittering in the weak sun. But the handprints on the window, tiny, pale, impossible, remained. I rubbed them, hoping they would disappear. But the cold seeped into my fingers. A cold that wasn't natural. A cold that clawed at the bone. I needed to leave. Anywhere but here. I grabbed my coat, my scarf, and rushed outside. The snow had stopped, leaving a crisp, white blanket across the street. But the town, it wasn't the town I knew. Everything was eerily quiet. The houses were intact, the chimneys puffing smoke, but no footprints disturbed the snow. No cars, no people. Nothing. I called out. My voice echoed unnaturally, swallowed by the silence. A gust of wind blew, and I thought I heard laughter, soft, childlike, melodic. But the sound was twisted, distorted, as if it came from a broken music box. My heart raced. I decided to walk to the main street, hoping to find someone. But every turn I took led me back here, to my apartment, as if the town itself was rearranging itself. Panic set in. I ran, blindly, through streets that should have led somewhere else. But the snow and the shadows twisted reality. I could see my own footprints behind me. And yet, when I looked back, there were more. Smaller footprints, endless rows of them circling mine. By nightfall, I was back at the apartment. How was this possible? I didn't remember running in circles, but here I was, standing in front of my door, my breath misting in the freezing air. The door opened with a creak, welcoming me, though I hadn't touched it. Inside, the lights were on. The tree glowed warmly. The ornaments stared at me with empty, hungry eyes. And there they were, the children. Not outside, not ghosts I might have imagined, but inside. They didn't move like children. Their limbs were too long, too thin. Their heads tilted at impossible angles. Their mouths moved in smiles that didn't reach their hollow eyes. "Come, come play," they whispered in unison. I slammed the door, backing away, but they pressed against it from the inside, the wood groaning under impossible weight. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed a knife again. Nothing. They didn't speak, didn't scream, just the whispers, growing louder, forming a chorus. "It's Christmas. Time to stay." I tried the windows. Locked. I tried my phone. Dead. No signal. I banged on the walls. Nothing. The air grew colder, frost creeping along the floorboards. The shadows lengthened, merging, stretching, becoming one with the children. I stumbled backward, tripping, falling, and then I saw it. The tree was moving. Its branches twitched like serpents, or hands, or something in between. I scrambled to the door again, trying to escape, trying to convince myself this was real, that I could wake up. But the apartment had changed. The corners were darker, walls farther apart, the ceiling higher, impossible geometry. The children surrounded me, whispering my name. Merry Christmas. Forever. I swung the knife blindly, cutting through the air, but my hand passed through them as if they were shadows. I screamed, clutching my head. The whispers became a roar. Then one child stepped forward, a girl with long black hair, her face pale, eyes hollow. She tilted her head and smiled. "You can't leave. You never left." I fell to the floor, sobbing, begging. "Please, I just want to go home. Please!" Her smile widened. The others closed in. The branches of the tree extended toward me, coiling, twisting. The ornaments' faces shifted, screaming silently. And then I felt it, pulling. Not by hands, not by force, but by something inside me. My body lifted, weightless. I tried to scream, tried to fight, but the room dissolved around me. I was in darkness, surrounded by whispers, surrounded by those hollow eyes. I saw flashes, memories, or visions. Families celebrating Christmas, laughter around the table. And then I was there, but not me. Someone else. Another soul. Another face trapped in the tree's ornaments, screaming silently. I realized then that I had been part of this all along. That first whisper, the handprints, the snow town. They weren't warnings. They were invitations. "It's Christmas," they whispered over and over. "Time to play forever." The darkness consumed me. I felt myself stretching, twisting, my body flattening into shadow. My screams echoed inside something vast, endless. I tried to remember my life, my apartment, the snow outside, but it was gone. Only the tree remained, glowing, ornaments flickering with the faces of countless lost souls. My face joined them, my eyes hollow, my mouth twisted in a silent scream. And then, I was the whisper. I was the handprint. I was the tiny, pale child watching from the outside, waiting for the next lonely soul to wander in. The next Christmas, when the snow fell and the town was silent, someone would knock on my door, and I would whisper, soft and sweet, melodic but twisted, "Merry Christmas. Come play forever." And I would wait. Forever. I thought I had learned to hate Christmas after the last few years. The endless lights, fake cheer, and the unbearable smell of pine and cinnamon lingering in the stores. This year, I wanted none of it. I told myself I would stay home, alone, with nothing but silence and the occasional hum of the radiator. The snow had been falling for days, thick and relentless, covering the streets and trees in a suffocating white blanket. The world outside my apartment window looked like a frozen painting, pristine and calm. I thought it beautiful at first. On Christmas Eve, I was sitting by the window, sipping tea and watching the snow drift past, when I noticed something strange in the yard below. A small, box-shaped object protruded from the snow. It was too symmetrical to be debris, too deliberate to be natural. I frowned. Nobody lived in the building next to mine. It had been abandoned for years. And yet, there it was. A small, perfectly wrapped gift, half buried in the snow. Curiosity gnawed at me. I put on my coat and boots, grabbed a flashlight, and went outside. The air was frigid, each breath forming a cloud before me. I knelt in the snow, brushing away the powder to reveal the gift. It was wrapped in old-fashioned paper, faded and crumpled, tied with a red ribbon that seemed impossibly bright against the snow. There was no note, no indication of who had left it. I hesitated. My instincts screamed at me to leave it, to run back inside, to pretend I hadn't seen it. But some morbid curiosity compelled me to pick it up. The moment my fingers touched the paper, I felt a jolt of cold, sharp as ice, crawling up my arms. My teeth chattered involuntarily. I brought it inside, setting it on the kitchen table. I examined it. It was small, the size of a music box. My hands shook as I untied the ribbon and peeled back the paper. Inside, nothing. I laughed nervously, the sound hollow in my empty apartment. Maybe someone had a cruel sense of humor, leaving an empty box for a stranger. I set it aside and tried to forget it. Then I heard it. A soft creaking, like the floorboards above me shifting. I live on the top floor. There should be no one above. My heart skipped a beat. I froze, listening. Nothing. When I turned back to the table, the box was open. Not just the paper, the lid itself had shifted, as if pushed by invisible fingers. And inside now, there was a tiny figurine. A doll, smaller than my hand, dressed in tattered clothing, with eyes that seemed unnaturally dark, unnaturally deep. It stared at me. I swear it moved, even slightly, the head turning to follow me. I dropped the box. It clattered to the floor, but the doll remained upright. Its eyes glimmered in the dim light. A whisper, barely audible, drifted from it. "Thank you for letting me in." I ran to the window, convinced I was imagining things. But the snow outside had changed. The yard, the street, even the trees. They were all blanketed in red. Not blood, yet it looked like it, fresh and staining the snow. And footprints, tiny, human-shaped footprints, leading from the abandoned building toward my door. I tried to leave, grabbed my coat, my keys, my phone. But every time I opened the door, the hallway seemed longer. The walls shifted slightly, almost imperceptibly, so that the stairs to the lobby stretched impossibly far, the exit receding like a mirage. Then I felt it. The doll, now in my hand, cold, impossibly heavy. Its eyes bored into mine. The whisper came again. "You can't leave. You belong now." Panic consumed me. I threw the doll across the room. It landed on the floor. But when I looked again, it was closer, impossibly, its tiny legs moving like a real creature. I screamed, grabbing anything, a chair, a broom, but the doll avoided every strike. The air grew thick. I could hear footsteps behind me, soft and deliberate, circling the apartment. The lights flickered, shadows stretched across the walls, forming figures I didn't recognize. Faces pressed against the windows, pale, their mouths open in silent screams. And always, always, the doll. Watching. Waiting. I tried to hide. Closed myself in the bathroom. The cold seeped through the walls. The whispers grew louder, layering over each other, forming a chorus. Thank you for letting me in. Thank you. Thank you. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had no meaning anymore. I could hear the snow outside, heavy and relentless. And then, a knock. Not on the door, not on the window. On the box. I turned, horrified. The doll's eyes glimmered. Its tiny hands pushed the lid, opening and closing over and over. And the whisper became a scream, filling the room, filling me, until I felt my mind fracturing, my will slipping. It's your turn now, I screamed, but my voice seemed swallowed. The room twisted, walls bending, shadows consuming light. The doll jumped into my hands, impossibly heavy, and I felt my body go cold, rigid. My vision darkened. The last thing I saw before everything went black was the snow outside my window, perfect and white, hiding the red that would never leave it again. When I woke, I was outside, standing in the snow. The apartment behind me was gone, replaced by an empty lot, abandoned, silent. The box lay at my feet, open, empty. I ran until my lungs burned, until the town looked familiar again. And yet, every Christmas, every snowflake that falls feels wrong. Every year, I see footprints in the snow, tiny, human-shaped, leading nowhere. And sometimes, at night, I hear the whisper. Thank you for letting me in. And I know, deep down, that one day, the doll will return. And this time, it won't just be a gift. The days after that Christmas Eve passed in a blur of dread and disbelief. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the doll, its hollow eyes staring, the tattered clothes moving unnaturally, whispering in the dark corners of my mind. I tried to convince myself it was a nightmare, some trick of exhaustion or imagination. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Winter stretched on. The snow refused to melt. The town looked normal to others, but to me, everything was off. Shadows lingered too long. Footsteps echoed where none should exist. And sometimes, just out of the corner of my eye, I saw the doll's shape tiny and pale, standing silently at the edge of a room, watching. I tried to bury it, throw it away, even burn it. Nothing worked. No matter where it was, the doll returned. On my doorstep, on the kitchen table, in my bag when I left for work. It didn't matter how far I ran, how carefully I hid. It always found me. One evening, as Christmas approached again, I sat in my apartment, wrapped in blankets, staring at the window. The snow had started falling again, thick, relentless, covering the streets in a perfect, suffocating silence. And then I heard the knock, not on the door, not anywhere I could see. The sound came from the box. I froze. The doll sat there, still and silent, but the box rattled slightly, as if something inside wanted to get out. I tried to ignore it, telling myself I was losing my mind, but the rattling grew louder, and then the whisper. Open it! It's time! Against my better judgment, I reached out. My fingers trembled as they touched the box. The moment I lifted the lid, the room changed. The lights flickered, shadows stretching like tendrils across the walls. The air turned icy, each breath a stabbing chill in my lungs. Inside the box was no longer the doll alone. Tiny figurines, dozens of them, lay crumpled in the snow-colored paper. Each one a perfect miniature version of someone. Friends, strangers, even me. My eyes widened. Some of them had hollow eyes. Some moved slightly, just enough to make my skin crawl. You belong with us now. The whispers became a chorus, filling the room, echoing inside my skull. I screamed and tried to throw the box across the room, but it hovered in midair, suspended, as if held by invisible hands. The figurines began to shift, forming shapes I couldn't comprehend. Hands, faces, legs, arms, all writhing together in impossible configurations, staring at me with hollow eyes. I backed away, tripping over the rug. The apartment stretched unnaturally, walls bending, ceiling rising impossibly high. Shadows moved independently, curling around me, tugging at my hair, my clothes, my skin. The doll leapt from the box, landing on the floor before me. Its eyes glimmered with an intelligence I couldn't fathom. It's Christmas. Time to play forever. The floor beneath me cracked, frost creeping upward in icy veins. I tried to run, but every step felt like wading through thick water. My muscles heavy, unresponsive. The shadows pressed closer, whispering my name in unison. The figurines crawled across the floor, forming a path of faces and tiny limbs toward me. I screamed again, louder this time, my voice swallowed by the howling wind that seemed to have entered the apartment itself. Then I felt it, a cold grip, not on my hands, but on my soul. My body froze. My vision blurred. The whispers became my own thoughts, reshaping my memories, twisting my mind. The doll leapt onto my shoulder, impossibly heavy, and pressed its hollow face to mine. Thank you for letting us in. I fell to the floor. The apartment dissolved around me. The walls, the ceiling, the furniture. They became one with the shadows, twisting into shapes of faces, hands, mouths, eyes. I realized then that I was not just a witness. I had always been part of this. Every Christmas, every snowstorm, the gift had been waiting for me to open it, waiting for me to invite it in. The figurines surrounded me now, forming a ring, their hollow eyes staring, their tiny mouths whispering, "It's your turn." I tried to fight, but my limbs no longer obeyed me. My screams echoed inside the void. I felt myself stretching, flattening, my body twisting into something small, fragile, like the others in the box. The doll perched on my chest, eyes gleaming with cruel satisfaction. And then the darkness swallowed me completely. When I opened my eyes again, I was outside, standing in the snow. My apartment was gone, replaced by an empty lot, abandoned, silent. The box lay at my feet, open, empty. I ran until the town looked familiar, but every Christmas the same snow falls. Every Christmas I see footprints, tiny, human-shaped, leading nowhere. And every Christmas at night I hear whispers. Thank you for letting us in. It's your turn. Come play forever. I've tried to leave the town, move far away, forget. But no matter where I go, the doll finds me first. In my luggage, my car, even under my pillow. And I know, deep in my soul, that one day it will come for me again. Not as a toy, not as a gift, but as the thing that will take me completely into the snow, into the box, into its world where Christmas never ends, where I will never escape. I can feel it now. The air grows colder. The wind outside whispers my name. The snow begins to fall. And in the distance, I hear a soft knock. The box waits. And this time, there is no running. I used to love Christmas carols. Now I can't hear them without feeling sick. That year, I moved into a small house on the edge of town, far from neighbors, far from noise. I told everyone I wanted a quiet Christmas. What I really wanted was to disappear. No family dinners, no questions, no pretending everything was fine. The house was old, too old. Wooden floors that groaned even when no one walked on them. Walls that seemed to breathe when the temperature dropped. But it was cheap, and it was empty. That was enough for me. On Christmas Eve, snow began falling just before sunset. Thick, slow flakes that swallowed sound. By nightfall, the world outside my windows had vanished into white silence. No cars, no voices, just snow and darkness. I turned off most of the lights and sat in the living room with a single lamp on. No tree, no decorations, just me and the ticking clock on the wall. Then I heard singing. At first it was distant, soft, a single voice carrying through the snow, a Christmas carol. I frowned and stood up, walking to the window. Outside near the road, I saw a figure, just one, standing perfectly still beneath a street lamp that flickered weakly. They were singing. Their voice was thin and slow, dragging the melody like it was struggling to remember the words. I couldn't make out their face. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe someone lost. Maybe a neighbor I hadn't met. Still, something about it felt wrong. Carolers usually came in groups. They laughed. They smiled. This voice did neither. I stepped away from the window. The singing stopped. A few seconds passed. Then it started again, closer, right outside my front door. I froze. The voice was clearer now. Too clear. It sounded dry, like it hadn't spoken in a long time. I held my breath, listening. The song ended. There was a pause, then a knock. Slow. Polite. 3 taps. I didn't answer. Another knock. Then the singing began again. Only now, the words were wrong. Familiar melody, unfamiliar lyrics. The voice twisted the song into something cold and hollow, repeating the same line over and over. Let me in. It's Christmas. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. I backed away from the door, grabbing my phone. No signal, no internet. Just a black screen and my own reflection staring back at me, pale and terrified. The knocking stopped. Silence returned. Too much silence. I thought maybe it was over. Maybe whoever, or whatever, had been there moved on. Then I heard footsteps. Inside the house. Slow footsteps above me. I stared at the ceiling. I lived alone. There was no upstairs movement before. But now, the steps were deliberate, pacing back and forth, as if someone was exploring rooms that didn't exist. The singing started again. This time, it came from everywhere. From the walls, from the floor, from inside my head. I ran to the door and yanked it open. No one was there. But in the snow, right at the threshold, were footprints, bare footprints, leading inside. I slammed the door and locked it, my hands shaking uncontrollably. The clock on the wall stopped ticking. The lamp flickered. The house felt smaller somehow, tighter, like it was closing around me. A whisper brushed past my ear. "Why are you hiding?" I screamed and spun around. Nothing. But the air felt colder, heavier. Frost began creeping along the edges of the windows from the inside. Then I saw it. In the reflection of the dark television screen, a figure standing behind me. Tall, too thin. Its mouth stretched unnaturally wide, frozen in the shape of a smile, where its eyes should have been, dark hollows, leaking shadow. It began to sing again. I dropped to my knees, covering my ears, but the sound came from within my chest now, vibrating through my bones. "Please," I sobbed. "Go away." The figure tilted its head. "You invited me," it said gently. "You were alone. You wished for silence." The walls cracked. The ceiling groaned. Shadows poured from the corners of the room, crawling toward me like living things. The figure stepped closer. Every step left frost on the floor. "Christmas is not meant to be spent alone," it whispered. So I stayed. The last thing I remember is the singing growing louder, joyful, triumphant, while the house filled with darkness, and snow fell inside the room like ash. They say the house is empty now. Every Christmas Eve, people hear caroling near the old road. Just one voice. Slow. Wrong. And sometimes if you listen closely, you can hear a second voice underneath it. Mine. Still singing, still inside. I don't know how long I was gone. When I opened my eyes, the house was silent again. No singing, no footsteps, no whispering breath against my ear. Just the dim glow of early morning leaking through frost-covered windows. For a moment, I believed it had been a dream. I lay on the living room floor, my body stiff with cold. My breath came out in thin clouds. The lamp was off. The clock on the wall was gone entirely, leaving behind a darker rectangle where it had once hung. I stood up slowly. My legs trembled, but they held. "Hello," I whispered. The house answered with silence. I walked from room to room. Everything looked the same but wrong, like a perfect replica missing something essential. The walls felt closer together, the ceiling lower. My reflection in the mirror looked unfamiliar, as if I were seeing myself through water. I checked the front door. It was open. Snow had drifted inside, forming a thin white line across the floor, stretching from the doorway into the center of the house. Bare footprints marked the path. My footprints. I slammed the door shut and locked it, my heart pounding. I didn't remember opening it. I didn't remember walking outside. That was when I heard the radio. I didn't own a radio. The sound came from the kitchen. Static at first, then a faint melody breaking through the noise. A Christmas carol. I walked toward it, every instinct screaming at me to stop. On the kitchen counter sat an old radio, yellowed with age, its dial cracked, its speaker buzzing softly. The song playing wasn't any version I recognized. The melody was familiar, but the rhythm dragged unnaturally, like it was being played underwater. Then the lyrics began. They were my voice, not a recording, not an imitation. It was me singing. My stomach twisted. I reached out to turn it off, but the moment my fingers touched the dial, the kitchen lights flickered and went out. The singing didn't stop. It moved. The sound came from the hallway now, then the stairs, then directly behind me. I turned slowly. The figure stood there again, closer this time. I could see details now. Skin stretched too tightly over its bones, mouth torn wide as if forced into a smile it couldn't maintain. Its chest rose and fell, but no breath came from it. "You woke up," it said, my voice echoing inside its throat. "What do you want?" I whispered. It stepped closer. Frost spread across the floor beneath its feet. "I already told you," it replied gently. I stayed. Memories flooded my mind. Things I didn't remember living. Moments of loneliness so deep they hurt to recall. Nights I'd wished someone would knock on my door. Times I'd begged the silence to break. "You sang for me," it continued. "You just didn't know it yet." The walls began to bleed sound. Soft humming seeped from the cracks. from behind the wallpaper, from inside the floorboards. I realized then that the house wasn't empty. It was full. Full of voices layered beneath each other, all singing the same carol, all slightly out of sync. I tried to run, but the hallway stretched endlessly. Doors appeared where there hadn't been any before. When I opened one, I saw the living room again. Another door led back to the kitchen. The house folded in on itself, trapping me inside its loop. The figure followed, never rushing, never stopping. "You don't leave on Christmas," it said. "You stay, you sing. That's how it works." The singing grew louder. I felt pressure building in my chest, my throat tightening. My lips trembled. And then I realized something horrifying. I was humming along. I clamped my mouth shut, but the sound pushed out anyway, vibrating through my teeth. My voice joined the chorus, perfectly matching the melody. The figure smiled wider. "Yes," it whispered, "just like that." The walls cracked open, revealing dark spaces behind them, rooms within rooms, filled with shadows shaped like people standing perfectly still. Their mouths opened in unison. They sang. I fell to my knees, screaming, but the scream became song halfway through, stretched and twisted until it no longer sounded human. The figure knelt beside me. "You don't have to be afraid anymore," it said. "You're home." Cold wrapped around me, not just on my skin, but inside my bones. I felt myself fading, thinning, like smoke drawn into a lung. The house inhaled. They found the place years later. No sign of a struggle, no body. Just frost on the walls, and a radio humming softly in the kitchen, still playing a Christmas carol no one could quite recognize. Sometimes, on Christmas Eve, people swear they hear singing near the road. One voice at first. Then another joins it. Perfect harmony. And if you stand close enough to the door, you might hear someone whisper from inside, "Don't spend Christmas alone." The door never opens, but the singing never stops.